प्लीज़ जितना हो सके मेरे बच्चे की मदद करें ताकि मैं उसके साथ एक खुशहाल ज़िंदगी जी सकूँ। मेरा नाम मेघा है। मेरा बच्चा 6 दिन का है और जब वो पैदा हुआ था तो उसे थोड़ी ऑक्सीजन
Good evening, everyone. I think we have here Amol, then Pallavi, Aniket, Sachin, and few people are there who are watching us live on YouTube. So I welcome all of you to the third episode of Careerfit Varsity talk show, and the topic is really interesting. It is, what do boys high performance know that I don't know? So before other people are joining in, just let me brief you about Career Fit Varsity movement, what it is and why I have started that. So there is a lot of uncertainty in the job market. People are experiencing so many problems related to their career growth, especially engineering sector. Okay, they are not liking their job. They are experiencing slow growth. Then they are lacking the clarity and vision in their career. So many problems are there. So I started this Career Fit Varsity movement to create awareness about mainly two things. The first objective is to stress the importance of being in the career which fits your values, personality, and talent. And even if you are already in such career, why it is important to maintain the career fitness. So career fitness movement is basically emphasizing on these two objectives. And I'm sure that today's this live talk show is also going to throw some light on these aspects. So today we have a very special guest amongst us. He has Actually, he worked at very different positions, starting from manufacturing, then marketing, finance, strategic management roles, and he has also worked into some senior leadership positions. Apart from his technical roles, he is also passionate about human psychology and human potential. So he's following his passion about human potential outside his tech role. He got his in electrical engineering degree. He earned his electrical engineering degree in the year 1983 from Rochester Institute of Technology, USA. And there he was also instrumental in developing one undergraduate course in microelectronic engineering. And this was the place when he realized his passion about teaching. So today's guest, he is also a high performance coach. He has access to world's number one personal development courses. He has taken this high performance coach certification from Brendan Butcher's High Performance Institute. So those who know Brendan Butcher, he is one of the world's leading high performance coach. So with this, let me bring the man himself, and he's none other than James Kawski. So welcome,
Thank you.
James.
Thank you so much, Megha. It's such a pleasure to be here with you, and thank you for that wonderful and warm introduction. And I love what you said about personality and values and talent. Finding what you want to do in alignment with that is absolutely critical. And another way, one way that I have thought about it over the years and in my current role is to follow what I was taught early on is called your vocation. And your vocation is your intersection of what you're passionate about, what you have skills in, and what you can get abundance from. And abundance can be monetary, abundance can be personal, fulfillment, but that's what your vocation is. And I think that we all strive to find that. And regardless of where you are or what you're doing, you can connect with your vocation. And I'm a firm believer of being able to identify these things and being able to connect with them so that you can maximize your level of satisfaction in life. But thank you so much for the introduction, and I'm really excited to be here.
Yes, thank you, James. Actually, we are honored to have you here. And I'm so excited about this show. I mean, when I asked you whether you are, asked you for, I gave you the invitation for coming to this show. And since that moment till today's moment, I'm so excited and I was looking forward for this talk show, specifically because this subject, high performance. Okay, since childhood, I was passionate about becoming a high performer. And I was always looking forward how I can improve myself so that I can be a high performer in whatever area I will go. So I hope that the people who are watching us live and the people who are in this room, they are also striving to become a high performer in their career or one or the other area in their life. So to start with, and before we go deep into this topic of high performance, I wanted to ask you that what exactly high performance refers to. Okay, so if you can elaborate that, then it would be easy for all of us to understand what it is at world standard.
Yes, well, that is an excellent question. And many times people feel intimidated by the term high performance because they look at individuals and compare themselves to others that are at more advanced stages of their career and say, that's a high performer, and how do I become that? How do I get to that level? And what I want to emphasize is that high performance is accessible to anybody at any time. And it's simply a kind of mindset that you have about your personal growth and development. So really, what high performers are individuals who consistently exceed their standard norms over the long term while building positive relationships and well-being. So it's really a holistic concept. And it's a concept of identifying what your standard norms are and laying out a plan to consistently exceed those standard norms in multiple dimensions. I work with my clients in 6 basic dimensions of which are the foundation of the work of high performance coaching. And it's amazing to me, regardless of what level you are at in life, there is always upside potential. And the only time we are really fully satisfied and happy with full joy and engagement in life is when we are pursuing that path of personal growth. Now, this applies to both the entry-level engineer and the CEO. You would be surprised how many CEOs who have all the money and fame that all the other people desire in their organization, how many of those are not really happy individuals, that either they've lost balance in their life or they don't know what's next for them. They feel that they've reached the pinnacle of their career, the pinnacle of their life. And I have clients who are CEOs who have the same problems that everyone else does. But the thing that they realized early on was that it's a process, that being engaged in the process of personal growth and development is how you are able to maximize that level of joy and full engagement throughout your life.
Yes, that's amazing actually, and good that you clarified that it is for everyone. Because when it comes to high performance, people people usually think that it is for CEOs at board of director level, or maybe the people who are into senior level, and they get detached from this subject of high performance. But yes, as you rightly mentioned, that it is not just for the top level people, but it is for everyone. And nice to know from you that high performance is not just the professional growth or the success in one of the aspect, that is professional growth, but it is also has this different dimensions, as you mentioned about having very good relationships, then very good health, energy levels, as well as it is not just on the short term basis, but on the long term basis, and also spiritual angle. Okay, so most people I think may not be knowing this, that all these aspects are so much essential for high performance. So if I ask you, James, that if one person is very successful into one of the aspect, for example, he has achieved all those goals in his career, but other things are actually affected. So would you call him a high performer?
I think that individuals who have achieved a lot in their life and reach a point where they know that there is something more left to what they can accomplish. They just don't know how to do it. They haven't lost the sense of what a high performer is, but they've lost that edge. They feel uncomfortable. They are suffering anxiety as well. And I've heard multiple stories of individuals who have reached those highest levels and said to themselves, is this all there is? And that's why one of the things that those individuals reconnect with, and one of the things that those individuals have recognized that they need throughout the year, is to be associated and to have a relationship with some kind of coach in their lives. It's difficult often for us to be objective about the path that we need to take. We get caught up in our own psychology. We get caught up in our own anxieties and triggers. And it becomes difficult many times for individuals, even at the highest level, to sort through those things. So that's why what you find is that not only the world's highest performers, but the individuals that have achieved the most are the ones that have had a relationship, some kind of relationship with a personal development coach throughout their careers. It's an incredibly important tool that they have to be able to connect with an individual who they themselves recognize their direction and potential for growth, but who has a practice whereby they help an individual discover their own truths. Coaches don't really, particularly high performance coaches, which I would like to mention that high performance coaching, as you said, is the number one framework by which people are coached throughout the world. And routinely, through surveys with clients every year, the satisfaction rate comes in at about 95% positive. And so, so there's a lot of coaching programs out there, but this is the reason why I identified with this. I was actually coached by a high performance coach when I was making my transition out of the semiconductor industry. So I think that getting back to the main point is that regardless of where you are in life, individuals can have a need to be able to identify what's next. Coaches help them, and it doesn't matter who you are. You can lose touch with what got you to that level of success and fall off your ability to maintain a high performance lifestyle because you don't know what to do next. You don't know what the next step is to take in terms of your personal growth, development, direction. You might have relationships that are not functioning properly. You might not be taking care of your body. You might not be taking care of your mind. And so a lot of times this happens to even the most successful people among us.
That's really insightful. Yes, I mean, I completely agree with you. So we should actually understand ourselves, and yes, coaches really help us to achieve this whole understanding. They help us to renew our belief systems because most of the time we get trapped into our own belief system, which we have got through our maybe upbringing, our parents, societies, and so many things. But when we talk to coaches, they help us to identify, to come out of our own limiting beliefs, and so that we can see the path ahead. So James, with this, actually, I would like to ask you, if someone really wants to become a high performer, what could be the first milestone that person should start with?
Wow, that is a great question. And it seems really obvious and it seems really simple, but the foundation for all of this work is to gain a sense of clarity primarily about yourself, about who you are, and to practice the skill and to develop the skill of self-reflection. This is like many things when we're trying to grow. This is something that is uncomfortable and difficult to do because you have to come to some truths about yourself that you might not particularly admire or like, but we all have these areas in our lives that are holding us back. We all have these issues that create conflict. And the only way that you're able to overcome them really is to be able to recognize them, to identify them. You've got to be able to say what it is that you need to take care of before you can slay it. You have to say it before you can slay it, is something that I often say. And so self-reflection is really the first step and gaining clarity into who you are and what makes you up and what defines who you are, what your values are. You might think you know them, but until you stop and actually think about them and put pen to paper and write them down, you haven't really explored in depth. And we are complicated people. Well, we are complicated beings, I meant to say.
Yeah.
That and throughout life, it's a dynamic of change and flow and who we are and who we identify with and how we identify, these things change. And so, like high performance, the process where throughout your life you're continuing to establish where you are and how you can improve. The same thing goes with self-reflection. It's a continual process. It's something that high performers are always engaged in, and there's there's just so much opportunity for us to be able to find the time. It doesn't take a lot of time for self-reflection, and it's a pretty simple process once you start doing it consistently.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Jame, for sharing this. And yes, I actually completely agree with you that most of the time, these things like self-reflection, self-understanding, what people think is, even I used to think that way, that yes, I know everything about myself. And you, I mean, pinpointed that thing. When it comes to putting down things, your thoughts in an organized way on paper, then actually we get that feeling. Yes, now we are knowing ourselves. Otherwise, there are so many thoughts in our mind that, and those are scattered. We cannot really figure out what exactly we are thinking about ourselves. We don't have idea. We think that we have idea about our strengths and weaknesses and who we truly are. But when it comes to writing down on regular basis, I think then and then we can understand ourselves better. So self-reflection, self-understanding, it is so helpful in getting clarity. And those who are here, I think we can also practice these things. So James, for the audience, can you give some simple ways of practicing this self-reflection?
Yes, it's a very accessible approach that I use, and everybody who is engaged and with understanding themselves, and everyone who is a high performer have a few practices that help them on a daily basis. And first of all, you have to cultivate your curiosity. Each one of us is a little bit different, and each one of us will be able to use the tools that are available to us in different ways. And there are many tools that can help you to understand more about who you are. But the first step is really, just as we both mentioned, is really to put pen to paper and to write and to journal. And it can be a very simple process. What I do every day without fail, even on Saturdays and Sundays, I will do this. And it's a simple act of thinking about, first of all, what I'm planning on doing for the day and what I want to accomplish and what are the non-negotiables for the day in terms of tasks, in terms of projects, in terms of personal growth and development, in terms of how I am going to interact with others. And then at the end of the day, I reflect back and I say, well, here's what happened in my day. And so this is an act of journaling. It's writing down your thoughts. It's writing down what you plan to do. It's writing down what you accomplished, and then comparing it and say, okay, here's where I can improve. So journaling is the first step. And there's multiple kinds of journals. I just mentioned one, which is just identifying what you're going to do at the start of the day, and then reflecting back. There's something known as a gratitude journal, which is really simple. It's one of the best things that you can do to get a good night's sleep. And that is, at the end of the day, all you need to do is write down 3 things that you're grateful for. And it doesn't have to be a major, huge thing. It can be very, very simple. I'm thankful that I had a wonderful dinner with my family tonight. I'm thankful that I have a smile on my face tonight before I go to bed. I'm thankful for the interaction I had today while shopping in the supermarket. There's when you think back on your day, it's so easy to find at least 3 things that you're grateful for. And by putting those on paper, right at your bedstand before you go to sleep at night, really a very, very powerful technique to get jump started on the journaling process. So everybody who's watching today can get started with that tonight. And I encourage you to do so. And it's all about taking that first step. High performers consistently exceed their standard norms. So taking that first step and consistently taking the next step and the next step, building habits into your life, stacking habits on top of one another. If you have a routine at night where you brush your teeth and you wash your face and you take your vitamins, whatever it might be, it's easy to add a new habit, just stack a simple habit on top of those that you already do. And that simple habit can be your gratitude journal. And so that's the first step, is really to take the time to self-reflect through journaling.
Wow, that's great. And I can second you. Since few months, even I have learned this and developed this habit, from my mentor. I have been following this since now 8, 9 to 10 months, and it is working like a magic for me. My fear, whatever I used to have earlier, those are replaced by faith now. And I am more confident on doing more things. So the simple habit of journaling, then gratitude is so powerful that, sometimes I wonder that there is a lot of power into this small things, daily things, small things on daily basis. But people ignore it. This is something which every one of us can do, right? But very few people do this. And we miss on all these small things. And we think that something complicated will happen in our life and that will change our life. But no, some simple things, simple proven things. This is true. Basically, gratitude is, many people have actually practiced it and they have got the results also. It is so simple to practice, but still people don't do it. But I think the people who are in this room and watching us live on YouTube, they now from today, they will start practicing gratitude journal, and also they will start planning their whole day. So all these small habits have tremendous power. Now moving forward to my next question, that is really interesting. I have seen many people have a lot of skills, talent, okay, good mindset also. They really have growth mindset. But what happens is they fall short of energy levels. At the end of the day or even during the day, they cannot operate on their full levels of physical energy as well as mental energy. But when I observe high performance, okay, whenever I observe high performing people, I really wonder how they get these energy levels. And this is what separates them from the ordinary people. So I would like to know, and even I think audience would like to know from you, what exactly helps us high performance to keep their energy levels very high?
That's a fantastic question, and there are some very simple approaches that we can all take that sound simple, but they end up being really challenging, particularly in this connected world that we have, where there are so many distractions that take us away from what it is that is most important, the most important thing that we should be doing right now. And so, first of all, you want to think about distractions as the enemy, and you want to be a ninja, become a ninja at distraction removal. And so just thinking about that in that terms, first of all, when distractions come into our lives, they can really, they can alter the flow of our day in such a way that drains a lot of energy from us. Each one of us only has a limited amount of mental stamina, which is, some people say, well, my most valuable resource is time. Well, actually, your most valuable resource is your mental stamina, and how much you have when it's at its peak, and whether or not you are doing the things during that period of time when your mental stamina is highest that require the deepest thinking that you need. And so high performers have become really good at focusing. I should say, high performers have a deep desire to continually improve their focus. Because focus is one of those things where, again, no matter how successful you are, that there's still upside potential. And that's the beautiful thing about this whole process, is there's no end to it. There's no end to the improvement that you can achieve. And that's at once a bit intimidating, because, I'm never going to reach my goal. No, that's not it. Your goal is, what are you doing right now in the present? Forgiving yourself from the past, not generating anxiety about the future, but what are you doing right this minute? And sometimes we recognize, sorry, I'm watching dog and cat videos on YouTube right this minute. And so sometimes we fall off of that wagon. It's inevitable. We are human. We are distracted. But being conscious of it and working every day to try to minimize those distractions, that is one of the best things you can do to maximize your energy, because each distraction takes you away from what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And each distraction forces you to change what you're thinking about. And then to get back to that most important thing, that takes a little bit of time and effort. And each one of those things it's a drain on your mental stamina. Your brain is burning calories like crazy all the time. And how you use that, those 5 pounds of gray matter in your head will dictate how you feel physically throughout the day and what kind of energy levels that you have. So high performers have become very, very good and recognize that it's important to be very good at focusing. And there are a number of ways that you can do that. One of the more popular ways is something called the Pomodoro technique. And it's similar to what I do, but the Pomodoro technique, it requires you to focus on one thing and one thing only in 30-minute blocks. And when that 30 minutes are done, then it's an opportunity for you to recharge and re-energize. And there are a number of ways to do that. Hydration is number one. That's one of the most important things that you can do, is to grab a glass of water, rehydrate as often as you can throughout the day. That's critical in being able to maintain high energy levels and good health. And so I personally, what I do is I work off of 50-minute time blocks. And if I can get 3 to 4 focused time blocks in one day, that is a killer day for me. That is a day that my achievement, my productivity is huge. And so one way to one way to improve how you perform on a daily basis is to track things. If you're not measuring it, then you can't control it. And if you want to maximize energy levels, you want to focus as much as you can. In order to focus as much as you can, you want to have as many uninterrupted blocks of focused effort in your day as you can. And so at the end of the day, when you reflect, you say, how many focus blocks did I have of working on one thing and one thing only, shutting off everything else? I'm not going to check emails. The only way I'm going to be distracted is if my boss comes up behind me and taps me on the shoulder and says, you got to look at this right away. As long as she doesn't come behind me and say that, well, I'm going to be completely, totally focused on just one thing. And then how many of those blocks did you have in the day, and how can you increase the number of those types of blocks? In the corporate world today, there's just so many meetings, so many emails. It's a huge, huge challenge and a huge, huge problem. So being able to nurture your mental stamina is absolutely critical.
That is very powerful, that what you're saying, that is the exact need of the hour. What I can see is people are losing focus into this distracted world. And if someone would ask me, I would say that focus is the real currency in today's age. That's the real currency. If you can manage your focus on the important task, then I think you have won the battle. But what happens is, in today's scenario, if we talk about this corporates and the job profiles, there is a lot of multitasking which happens. And we have basically, we all the time are busy into doing so many things together, checking emails, responding to people. Okay, and particularly I am talking about now engineers. Okay, I have been into that career for 16 years. And I remember how painful it is when you are focusing on some design, and at the same time you have to manage the calls also, the emails also. Someone is someone is calling you for the meeting. So many reminders are there. So it really distracts us from producing the quality output. So can you suggest something to manage this? I should not say that we should manage the multitasking. We should rather avoid it. But still, how we can deal with that?
Yeah, yeah. It's a huge problem, and part of it is understanding how you work the best. Some people that are the most effective in doing deep work are they're the ones that recognize their personality type and what works best for them. So some people really thrive at total isolation, and they can't get they can't get anything done unless they're just completely disconnected, and for long periods of time. But I think in today's world, particularly for today's professionals, it's more of a strategic time during the day of when you're identifying when your mental stamina is at its highest, and then making that a non-negotiable period of time through which you aren't trying to juggle many things at once. When we talk about multitasking, it's in the computer world, multitasking is it's necessary. So that there's multiple things going on simultaneously in our computing systems. It has to, otherwise things just would never get done in terms of linear processes. But I think largely, there's so much that goes on in our minds and our brains, but you can only do one thing at a time, and you can go jump, and if multitasking is doing one thing for 10 seconds and doing something else for a minute, and then just bouncing all around, hugely draining of energy and really very difficult to maintain. So trying to understand where you fit into that continuum of personalities. I mean, there's a whole book that's been written about that. Here, this is one of the several books that I'd like to mention and recommend, and some of my favorites is Deep Work by Cal Newport, who's an ex MIT guy, professor of computer science, and Rules for Focused Success in a Distracted World, Deep Work. And this goes into a lot of detail about an individual's approach towards maintaining high levels of focus so that you can achieve more and more. So it's a complicated question, and each one of us will approach it a little bit differently based on our own style and our own personality. But it really comes down to being able to isolate and focus on one thing at a time.
Yeah, I think, yes, it's really complicated. Even I feel that. And here is the place, I think, where leadership roles come into picture. People who are actually handling teams, who are managing teams, they should be convinced on this thing that for producing quality output, particularly which we do into engineering industry, those who are into the roles which really demands for high level of concentration, they should allow their team to go into that depth. Okay, and they should not more often disturb it by assigning them more tasks or just distracting them with another activities. And when people at leadership levels, they will understand these things, then this problem might be solved to some extent. That's what I think, and I hope it will actually more and more people will become aware of these things. Otherwise, there won't be any quality work when it comes to detail engineering or core engineering sector or even research and development sector, because all these things really requires very deep work. And I think the book which you suggested, I think it will really help the audience. Go ahead and purchase this book and give your feedback also, right? We are going to share all these things, also some interesting links with you on this YouTube channel itself in the description. So don't worry that even if you are not noted, we will be giving this list to you. Now coming to my further question, that what I have observed in my 16 years of experience is there are two types of people. First category of people is they are really good with skills, very high IQ. Okay, very good when it comes to their skills and talents, IQ level, but they don't strive for excellence. Okay, they think that high performance is a choice. On the other hand, there is another category of people. They are actually at average level, I would say. They are not above average, but at average level. But these are the people, they are always striving for excellence. Okay, and when it's come to showing up, taking consistent actions, and doing things on consistent basis, having a lot of determination, they are really good at it. And what I observed is the second category of people, mostly they are the high performers. And I really wonder that it is just because of their state of mind, okay, or their attitude towards high performance, they are able to get it. Whereas the first category I mentioned, that they have the potential to achieve high performance, but because their state of mind is not that, okay, they don't strive for it, they don't achieve it. And it really makes me think, how can we achieve that state of mind which this second category of people have? So I'm sure that you must have coached many people on this thing, how to get that state of mind which will push us to do more and more things.
Yeah, that's a fascinating question, because on the one hand, I think the first type of person that you're referring to are, it's It's the one, the individual who has tremendous skills and talents, but they never fully realize them. They never fully develop them. And then there are those individuals who have average talents in maybe many areas, but they're the ones that seem to, many times they're the ones that seem to make the most success and make the most progress. And it's interesting because I think that one way to think about it is that when you're given advantages, when you're given privilege, when you're given given gifts that put you at a starting point that is a little bit advanced relative to others, that's almost a limiting, that creates a limiting belief in your mind that you can that you've got these skills and talents and those will take you where you need to go without having to apply yourself and having to do the work necessary to achieve. And I'm reminded of a quote by an American president. When as you were asking this question, it came to mind. And the president, his name was Calvin Coolidge, and he lived from 1872 to 1933. And Calvin Coolidge said this once, and I often think about this in terms of my, where I've personally come from and when I've thrived the most in my life. And the quote is this: "Nothing in this world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent." And that quote just rings so true for everyone. And so regardless of what you start with in life, and regardless of what you end up with in life, you will make the most of your life by persistence. You will make the most of your life by being consistent. And you'll make the most of your life through the lifelong development of discipline. And that's fundamental to the definition of high performance. Consistently exceeding your standard norms, consistent, persistent, doing it every day. And that's really the key. That's the formula, regardless of what gifts you've been given. And it's not so much where you end up at the end of your life, it's where you've come from and how far you've come from where you started. That's really the most important thing. And all of us have access to the ability to apply ourselves with a high degree of persistence and consistency. But like I said, I think sometimes the people that are given the most gifts, I think they find it the most difficult at times to be persistent, because they feel that those gifts are enough. They don't have to work. And that's a fallacy. And sometimes that's a difficult thing to overcome.
Wow, that's simply amazing, I think. And the people who are present here and watching us live, don't bother at what skill levels you are, and don't think that you don't have some natural talent within you, and that's why you cannot achieve excellence or high performance. I think what James has mentioned, perseverance and determination is the key. Okay. And yes, I completely agree with you. Those who actually come with this natural inborn talents with them, sometimes they take it for granted. They think that because they are having this talents naturally, they really did not do anything on that. And that's the point that's the point where they fail. And that's why they cannot achieve more. Whereas on the other side, just people who are showing up every day, those who are consistent, and they achieve this excellence.
Exactly.
That's really fascinating. I mean, I always get fascinated by this human nature, how it is multifaceted, and why few people are able to do certain things, why few people are not able to do. And it also really, I mean, I asked a lot of questions in this regard, that why this is happening, why this is not happening with this person, why this is not happening to that person, even in spite of having so many skills, okay, and knowledge, wisdom, everything. But then, yes, as you have rightly pointed out, these two things are the very important aspects of high performance. Now, my further question is quite related to this previous question. I often wonder that when it comes to personality tests, and we also hear that you should ask what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses. Everywhere we see, uh, we read all these things, or we hear from the self-development trainers or coaches. Then actually, I wonder how exactly we should look at these things, personality tests or these strengths and weaknesses. Because on one side, we are saying that just now you said that persistence and determination is the key. Then, if I have got my strengths, I have got result for personality tests, how I should look those towards those test results.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. I think many organizations employ uh, personality tests for the benefit of their employees, to help them try to figure out how they fit into the organization. But what I'm more interested in is how we use them as individuals to figure out how we can improve ourselves, to figure out what our blind spots are, and to really understand ourselves, getting back to what we talked about before, this whole concept of self-reflection. And I'm constantly looking at ways to try to better understand myself. And it was part of a dinner conversation. We had some friends over a few nights ago, and there are a couple of psychologists that are part of our friend group that were here for dinner the other night. And there was a discussion around the table about a particular approach for evaluating yourself, and it's called the Enneagram uh, approach, the Enneagram test, spelled Enneagram. And I've again, as a high performer, when I hear something like this, I become very interested, and I become very curious. I want to understand it and really apply it. And what I came to find is that this particular approach to personality profile, it's it's probably, just based on my limited research over the last few days, it seems to be identified as the one that best serves individuals for personal growth. And a lot of times therapists will use, psychological therapists will use it with their clients, but it's something that we can use as individuals. And one thing that as I was taking the quiz for the Enneagram, one thing that just became really obvious to me, because I took it a couple of times, because the first time I went through it, I said, the answers weren't who I am. I said, that identified someone who I, at the moment, aspired to be, not a particular individual, but a type of person that I aspired, that I wanted to be. And that's good to know who that is and maybe which direction is, but it's better to really understand who you are. So when you take these psychology profiles, it's uncomfortable. like I said before, when we are developing ourselves. Now think about the physical world. Think about athletes. You've heard the phrase "no pain, no gain." And what that refers to is, if I'm not working out hard enough so that I'm experiencing some level of discomfort, then I'm not getting anywhere. And that's the same thing with everything in life, is that you've got to go through some discomfort in order to realize growth. And relative to personality profiling, that's also the case. If you know that when you've taken one of these online evaluations, one of these online tests, you know that you've identified the right personality profile when you have mixed feelings about it, when you have a sense of pride about the good things, but then you have a sense of shame about the bad things. And that tells you that you're over the target.
Yes.
You're at that point where, oh, that's who I am. Because coming to realization with your blind spots, the things that are, the negative aspects of your personality, coming to terms with that is really difficult. It's hard to do. And that's one of the areas that is the work in our lives, is to come to terms with the things that we're a little bit ashamed of. Right? So the Enneagram is a great approach, and I've provided you with the test that I took. It's a free test that tells you which of the 9 different dimensions you are, and there's also a link that helps to describe what those 9 dimensions are. If you decide to buy the full report, I think it's like $20, $19 US. But it's not something that you need to do. It's just an opportunity for you to take the test, which is about I think 200 questions that you have to answer. And I would say, if you put in 30 minutes to answering those questions for this particular test, that's about the right amount of time. You want to think about each one of them and really answer them in terms of, this is exactly how I would answer this question. And it's not who I want to be. It's who I am. That's tough. That's difficult. That's a difficult. Self-reflection is hard work. It's really hard, but really valuable.
I completely agree with you. While I have given myself so many personality tests, and we tend to select the answer towards the person whom we want to become, okay, not who we are today. And that's really difficult, okay, because we feel ashamed that we are not good enough in that area, and we choose the answer which reflects our future self. So we should be very careful in answering those questions meticulously, and then only we will get true self-reflection. And I personally see towards this personality test is I get some areas of my improvement, right? But one thing is very clear, that we should not limit ourselves with this personality test, that because it is given this test, I cannot do this thing good. Okay, that should not be the case, and that's where I think people should be careful. Otherwise, they might develop this bias that my personality is introvert. I can never be an extrovert, right? So that should not be the case. And there, actually, I tell people that it should be a guideline to understand what you are today. But that's not basically who you want to be. You can change it. You can take some consistent action, and you can change it. And it is possible, right? I think you can suggest something on this, whether this natural personality traits, to some extent, I think those are flexible. What is your take on this?
Yeah, I I absolutely agree that's the case. And furthermore, when we take a lot of these personality tests, like Myers-Briggs, for example,
Yeah.
It puts you into one bin. This is who you are, ENTJ, or whatever it is, right? And it's like, oh, and so it says that people are of these distinct areas. I mean, astrology is kind of the same way.
Yes.
Every Capricorn is the same.
Yeah.
Not real. No, it's impossible. Everybody who's born in the month of December is exactly the same. Just doesn't make sense. And there's so many contributing factors. So the reason why I like the Enneagram is it's really fluid, and it it recognizes that there's interactions between each of the personality profiles, and suggests that there's elements of so you think of, there's 9 personality profiles, and it's a continuum, it's a circle. And so whatever, I actually, came out at about the same level with 2 different personality profiles.
Mhm.
And for each one of those, there are 2 nearest neighbors. And for each one of those nearest neighbors, there's a lot of interaction. And so, so there's a little bit of, 6 different personality profiles that are in me, with 2 that are dominant. And then there's all these other interactions that the Enneagram helps you to reveal and understand. And again, it's simply a tool. And how
Yes.
how you use that tool is, makes all the difference. I mean, if the tool that you have is a hammer, and you're trying to pound a nail in with the claw on the hammer, you're not going to get very far. You need to turn the hammer over. And so if you're taking a personality test by answering questions that are who you aspire to be, but not who you are, you're not using the tool properly. And so that's just one way to look at it in terms of how to use the tool properly. But yeah, it's and it's fascinating to me to learn about yourself and to learn about other people and how you interact, and it's just one step, it's one tool, but a really valuable one, and kind of fun to take these online evaluations. But the Enneagram, I think, is the best for personal growth and development, the one that you can use as a tool to take your life to the next level.
Yes, that was really insightful, and I like the analogy how you compared the astrology to this personality test. It always comes into my mind, and India has this deep-rooted astrology. Astrology is a science in India, and many people believe in astrology, and it is similar way. As we are finding out our personality trait, as you rightly mentioned in this Myers-Briggs 16 personality test, if you are ENTJ or ENFJ, then people will, or we myself get that bias that we are this, right? So same thing happens with astrology. People think that we are Leos, that's why we are behaving this way. And so many biases we develop. And yes, rightly, it is just a guideline which we can use for our betterment, but it should not never become a limitation for us. That is the point which everyone should be careful about. Even for astrology, people who follow astrology, I also tell them that just use it for guideline. Don't be binded by that fact that you are someone, right? It's quite interesting. So this tool which you have mentioned, we are going to share with the audience in the YouTube description so that they can go and take this free personality test and they can find out about their traits. That's quite interesting. All of you will surely enjoy that activity. So coming to my further question that is related to productivity. So this topic is so hot in the industry that everyone is looking for the highly productive people. Okay, this is so much of competitive world, and the deadlines are also shrinking very fast. Earlier, before say 5 to 10 years back, if some activity used to take say 1 month, now people are expecting that you should complete it in 1 week. That's how the deadlines are shrinking. So organizations are preferring the employees who are more productive. And obviously, no doubt about it, high performers are the productive people. They can produce more output compared to the average performer. And that's why they get appreciated. So I really want to understand from you what is that secret of high performance so that they produce this higher amount of output, which really matters. And that's why they are getting appreciation also.
You know, one of the things that's interesting, particularly with regards to the book that you have in the background, the whole concept of high performance habits,
Yeah.
is that, you know, the 6 habits that are referred to are the habits of clarity, energy, productivity, courage, influence, and performance necessity. And so the fascinating thing about that is that like the Enneagram, which is a continuum, really those high performance habits are a continuum. They all interact with one another. You know, you can't be productive if you don't feel well. So energy plays an important part in it. You can't be productive unless you have clarity about who you are and where it is that you want to go. You can't be productive unless you exercise increasing levels of influence. You can't be productive unless you have the courage to overcome your fears. You can't be productive unless you identify with the concept of performance necessity, where why is it that you are applying yourself in this particular area? What's the motivation, right? So everything plays into productivity. And again, similarly, you know, all of those high performance habits interact with one another, but productivity is kind of like the beneficiary of all of them. And so high performers recognize that in order to maximize their productivity, which, by the way, in the framework that I coach my clients in, the first 12 sessions that I work with my clients in, you know, we cover all of the high performance habits. And productivity, out of the 12 sessions, productivity is the one that we cover twice because, you know, we start at the beginning to get some quick wins, and then we study it at the end to master our productivity. And so you have to, you know, so whatever it is that you're doing, you have to ask yourself, you know, is this something that I should be doing? Is this something that's really going to benefit me? Is this something that if I don't do it, the opportunity cost is high? Is this something that I have a high degree of autonomy in? Oh, and that reminds me of another book that I want to mention. And this is, you know, in order to be productive, you have to be motivated, right?
Yeah.
So this book by Daniel Pink called Drive, New York Times bestseller, you know, the surprising truth about what motivates us. And, you know, in the beginning, way back, you know, hundreds of thousands of years ago, millions of years ago, you know, the things that motivated us were simple. It was survival. And one of the things that early man discovered was fire. And one of the things that fire did, besides cook our meals and keep away the predators, was that it allowed us to come together as a group to tell stories. So thank you again for having this campfire that we're all able to gather around and share our stories, you and I, and so others can hear. And so, you know, so way back, you know, survival was really the thing that motivated us. And then this concept, you know, motivation 2.0, you know, has been the concept of carrots and sticks. You know, we learn about carrots and sticks as children. It's how we motivate our kids. You know, either we give them a reward, which is the carrot, or we punish them, which is the stick.
Yeah.
You know, that's how you get a horse to move. You know, it's you put a carrot in front of the horse, or you hit him on the backside with a stick to get him to move. And so much of our motivation through the Industrial Revolution and into the 1950s and even in the 1960s, it was focused on carrots and sticks. And even today, you know, that's a kind of motivation that works, but it only gets you so far. You can't get to those really high levels unless you adopt a new kind, or understand and adopt a new kind of motivation. And there's 3 dimensions to that new kind of motivation where productivity really becomes stratospheric. It's when you have a certain amount of autonomy in what it is that you're doing. And I'm taking this concept from this book, Drive by Daniel Pink. So it's not my idea, it's his, but I think it's beautiful in its simplicity. Having autonomy, having a say in what it is that you're doing during the day, and you know, and being able to dictate what it is that you're working on and how you're spending your time, as opposed to having someone looking over your shoulder and telling you, do this, do this, do this, do this. Autonomy motivates us. Having the opportunity to master what it is that we're doing, to develop mastery in what it is that we are doing, so that we are growing, that motivates us. And if it's in alignment with our purpose, that motivates us. Now, knowing what your purpose is, that takes some time and effort. Yes. And work. And it's why, you know, it's the final session when I do my initial engagements with my clients. It's the last thing that we focus on, the mastering your purpose. Yeah. Because all of the work that we do in front of that is understanding who we are. And you can't really master your purpose until you understand who you are. So autonomy, mastery, and purpose are the things that motivate us in the modern world. And if those are things that are lacking in your work, in your current position, your current assignment, whatever it is, those are areas that you can focus on personally. And there are also things that you can have a conversation with your supervisor. You can have a conversation with the management or with senior management, you know, understanding what motivates people. And, you know, and in this book, Drive, it helps to really lay it out and study it so that you can become well-versed in this concept of modern motivation.
That's really insightful. I mean, you're sharing such a piece of advice that is priceless. I tell you that this is so much necessary to understand all these things. And as you rightly mentioned, that now the motivation is autonomy. And even people would agree to me that in today's age, if you see that the trend is changing actually. People are looking for the jobs, career, which is giving them more autonomy compared to when we look back then 15 or 20 years back, right? So nowadays, the awareness is increasing day by day. People are looking for the roles which is giving them more autonomy. They are also trying to become master of particular thing instead of having so many skill sets here and there. They are focusing on one particular skill set or the domain, and they are becoming master in that particular domain. Also, so many people are working towards finding out their purpose. I feel personally that I don't know, maybe I might be late. You can tell it better. That earlier this was not the trend. More people were not aware about finding out your passion and purpose. But now you see, while choosing the career path, or when it comes to the mid-career level, wherein people get confused, they lack clarity, then they start thinking that what is their purpose of their career, their entire life, and they then align their career with their purpose, and that actually motivates them for a longer period. And that's the real motivation. That's really awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So moving to the further question, this is also a really interesting question, which I had this thing in my entire career. always I used to think that I saw so many good people, they're in their technical skills, so many good engineers. Since I worked in the engineering industry, I always talk engineers, because my experience was into that industry. So these people who were good with their technical skills, I found that they were actually not able to create the influence in the workplace. Even though they were good at their skills, they failed to get influence. Also, they were not able to persuade their ideas to the other person. So, and when it comes to high performance, there are a bunch of people who can do everything well. And high performers are that way that they can really create the influence in the surrounding, and we can notice it very well. So, how one can create influence? If, for example, the people who are here, if you want to guide them, how they can create influence in their workplace, what they should do.
Mm, excellent question. And it's interesting because in the high performance framework, influence and persuasion are really two different things. Influence is really the foundation. The more influential you are, the more persuasive you can become. And persuasion is really, it refers to a focused subject. For example, I want to persuade my teenager to do their homework. I will not be as persuasive being able to convince my teenager to do their homework if I'm not a very good role model when it comes to getting work done around the house. So thinking in terms of that, so one way to become more influential is simply to become a better role model, to talk the talk and then walk the walk. To say what you're going to do is one thing, but to actually do it in practice is another. So role modeling the way is a fundamental habit that allows us to elevate our level, increase our level of influence. And then a second way to approach this is, so this applies to an entire industry that exists now, which is the influencer industry, which is, and so people that are influencers, what they're doing is they're offering different perspectives for people. That they're helping people to look at things from different angles, different perspectives. They're actually teaching people how to think about things differently. And so that's how you influence, is by teaching people how to think differently. And how can you be more role model the way at work? Well, it's obvious. That's a pretty straightforward one. Is you both when you're being observed, but also when you're not being observed, you want to be in alignment, in integrity with your values. You want to minimize distractions, as we've talked about before. You want to treat people with kindness and respect. So many things that you can role model in the workplace. Teaching people how to think differently, it makes you an influencer. So coming to a meeting prepared with your perspective and being ready to share that perspective is one way where you can teach people how to think. If you come to a meeting and you sit through the meeting on your hands and you're dying to say something, then if you don't say it, you're missing an opportunity to increase your level of influence. And so having the courage to overcome your fear, the fear of the loss of your reputation, for example, by saying something that might get questioned, those are things that degrade your influence by being quiet. And the final thing is challenging people. is one. That's a way where we're able to increase our level of influence by challenging people. And you can challenge your boss, your supervisor. You can challenge the CEO when you're in a all company meeting by asking questions. You can challenge your children. You can challenge the people in your life, and it's not an adversarial challenge. It's challenging them to be better. So these are ways that you can increase your influence. And by building your influence, you build your persuasion. And for example, to persuade someone to increase their level of performance, to persuade someone that you're buying a new car from, or buying a house from, or persuading your children to excel more in school. There are a couple of things that you have to do. You really have to acknowledge their reality, acknowledge what it is that they're experiencing, make sure that they know you understand what they're going through. And by acknowledging that, and then by stoking their ambition for something better, those are the things that you can do to persuade someone. And a lot of times we go into situations where we're trying to persuade someone and we come into it cold. We don't think about it. We don't prepare. You'd be amazed at how many people don't prepare for persuasion situations.
Yes.
And by just doing a little bit of thought, a little bit of preparation before you go into it, you can come out of it much more successfully. So yeah, influence and persuasion are kind of interact with one another. I like to think about it as influence. Influence is the foundation that propels us to become more persuasive.
That's amazing. I mean, see this, as you rightly mentioned, that persuasion skills, people just go unprepared. They never take some steps to develop these skills. So if we take some conscious efforts to prepare for that moment, definitely we can do better when it comes to persuasion. But when it is about influencing, yes, the things you mentioned, okay, what I understand, it takes a lot of courage. So my small question to you is that, can everyone do this? If I have to specifically ask people who are shy, introvert, can they also influence others? Extrovert people, they are anyway outgoing, okay, with little bit of more efforts, they are able to do it. But what about introverts? Can they do this?
Yes, yeah, of course. I mean, I think a lot of times extroverts are they damage they can damage their influence by being extroverted.
Okay.
And so if I were to ask you the question, who are the most successful salespeople, extroverts or introverts? What would you think?
Prima facie, I would think that maybe it is extroverts.
Exactly. And I think most people would say that that's obvious, the people that are the most talkative or the most but in reality, extreme extroverts and extreme introverts are about equal. It's the extroverts do themselves disservice sometimes because they might be the most aggressive, but it's that aggressiveness that turns a lot of people off. Introverts maybe might not give themselves as many opportunities because they withhold, but those people that those are people that tend to be trusted more. So it's the ambiverts, it's the people that are in the middle that are the most effective salespeople. So having a little bit of introversion and a little bit of extroversion, and combining them, those are the people that are the most effective salespeople. And think about it, the people that you trust the most, but also, aren't afraid to to talk to you. Those are the ones that are the most effective and that are the most persuasive. And this has been proven by research. It's that I'm not just making this up. This is it's known psychological studies that have shown this. So being an ambivert is really the way. And if you are if you're an introvert, if you're shy, you can develop the skill sets to be able to be more outspoken. And if you're an extrovert, you can examine yourself and say, oh, I need to tone it down a little bit. I need to listen more rather than talk more. And so I think that everybody has opportunities to grow. The ambiverts, the people that are already in the middle, they probably don't even realize it and realize their potential. But I think that it's within all of our grasp to be able to get to that level that is the perfect balance between generating trust because we listen and we're empathetic versus being forthright and outspoken and speaking our mind. So again, understanding who you are is the first step. Yeah.
Again, we go back to self-reflection and self-understanding. Yes.
I know, it's perfect. We came right back to the beginning.
Yes. And this is so important, I specifically ask you this question because I come across with such people. And I really open their mind up for this thing because they think because of their introversion, they cannot do certain things. And that's why I specifically chose this question because many people in engineering sector, they are introverts. Very few people are extroverts because the nature of job is also that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for specifically them, I asked this question to you and you beautifully answered it. I think people must have got a lot of insights from your answer. Now coming back to again the influence part of it, when you are showing this courage, okay, I think that's where people feel stuck. I mean, what I feel that we are not short of talent, our world is really not short of talent, but we are short of courageous people. But when it comes to again high performance, they demonstrate courage consistently. Each time they show courage. How come they develop this tough mindset so that they don't fear for the failures, as you mentioned, that fear of the maybe bad reputation, all those things doesn't come to their mind and they show up consistently, show courage, and that's why they are high performers. So could you please elaborate on that part about the courage?
Great question. Because courage is really it's the linchpin to making everything work.
Yeah.
And we talked about pain before, and about without experiencing pain, you can't experience growth. And the same goes for being able to exhibit courage. High performers understand that no matter who you are, we all have things that we believe will cause us pain. And therefore, it's really important. First step is to understand what kind of pain we expect to do, we expect to experience. And the first dimension of pain is something called loss pain. So if we do something, what do we perceive we might lose? If we decide to change jobs, do we think that we are going to lose our stature that we've built? If we speak up in a meeting, are we going to lose our reputation because we may that what we say might be perceived as foolish. If we if we make an investment, is there fear that we're going to lose our investment? So there's pain associated with loss. Then there's pain associated with process. I really want my MBA, but I'm not going to. I don't want to do it because I don't want to. It's going to be too painful to give up all the things that I have to give up to get my MBA, and so I'm not going to do it. But identifying that there's process pain, our perceived process pain, will prompt us to say, well, you know what? Let me talk to my best friend about this. Let me talk to my spouse. Let me talk to my boyfriend. Let me talk to my mother. Let me say this is what I fear. And so understanding that it's process pain that is the source of our fear helps us to, understanding it first helps us to overcome it. And by reaching out and asking help from others that are important to us helps us to overcome all of these different pains. The final pain is outcome pain, which is we decide that we want to do something, but when we get to the end, we might not be happy with the result. And so we say, well, we're not going to do it because the outcome is uncertain.
Yeah.
Well, of course, the outcome's uncertain. But when you realize that high performance isn't about reaching the destination, high performance is about what you're doing today, what you're doing in the present. Right. Having those goals and targets are important because they give us direction. But if we fail, well, that is the best teacher. Failure is the best teacher. And so failure is not a bad thing. Failure is inevitable for all of us in all these dimensions of our lives. And if there's one important point I can leave you guys with, it's important to understand that experiencing failure is opportunity. I can't remember who said it, but God gives us gifts wrapped in failure.
Yes. That's very powerful. I really resonate with you that there are only two things in the world: either there is a success or there is a learning. There is nothing called failure.
That's right.
And this pain is the actually some person, I think Rumi is a very great philosopher. He has said this thing that pain is the time when light enters within you. Okay, so failure is what basically we experience some kind of pain, and that's the time when it is the light enters within us. We get new opportunities, we get new insights from that experience, and it is so wonderful. And if all of us can look towards failure and fear like this, I think we will be able to demonstrate courage. And as you rightly mentioned, we should be able to identify it first. Whether it's a loss, it's fear due to the process or fear of the result. And once we can segregate what kind of fear it is, we can work towards that. And without worrying much about the output, we should focus on the present and just demonstrate courage this way, and you will be able to influence. And it is really amazing. I mean, I have goosebumps right now when you said about this thing, pain, and the God gives us gifts wrapped in this pains and failures. That's so powerful. Once we deeply understand this, I think we can really work on ourselves better.
Yes. Brilliant. I think there's a question in the chat.
Oh, yes. We will take the questions. Yes, I will read it. How important role diplomacy plays in a high performance career? I have seen highly skilled, effective people often losing the battle in the front of diplomatic people. Do you recommend diplomacy as one of the influencing skill? Nivedita is asking this question.
Yeah. Yeah. So I, there's politics. Sometimes the political people that we work with, who cynically know how to play the game. Sometimes we see them being more effective. Diplomacy is I think that's a little bit different than politics. Office politics is something that that it's a reality. Sometimes people are favored because they they approach their job in a way that we look at as being distasteful. They're trying to get favoritism by through the boss, and you can see through that. And a lot of times we have problems in our careers when we compare ourselves to others, and so this is a very dangerous thing, is to comparing yourself to others, particularly when you look at others who are succeeding politically. So you should never compare yourself to who someone else is today. You should only compare yourself to who you were yesterday. And if you stay on that path, you will continue to improve and develop your influence. Now, diplomacy, when I think about diplomacy, I think about the discussion we had before, and that is who's the most effective salesperson, the introvert, the extrovert, or the ambivert. And I think the ambivert, the person who is most trustworthy, but is willing to exercise courage and step out of their comfort zone. That's the person who ends up being the most influential, and I think also and who is the most diplomatic. Diplomacy is tact. Tact means coming at something from a perspective of understanding. And understanding comes from asking the right questions. Understanding comes from listening. Understanding comes from openness. Understanding comes from allowing your vulnerability to allowing yourself to be vulnerable, and that all comes back to courage. So yeah, that's just an excellent question, and I think that really it gets back to that this whole idea of high performance and how all of these things interact with one another. So a bit of a rambling answer to that question, but I hope that helps you and answers your question for you.
Yes, thanks for answering that, James. And James has very good, interesting announcement for you. So over to you, James. I think you can announce your mastermind.
Yeah, so I'll be launching a new corporate mastermind in the coming months, and if anyone is interested in participating in this, the best way to get information about this program, which I'm going to be launching in a couple of weeks, is to join my community. And Megha will put a link in the description that will allow you to join my online community. And every week I publish free content, and by joining my online community, you will get 7 products that I put together: values assessment, a number of writings that focus on clarity, on courage, on human dynamics, on influence, on various subjects that are important to high performers. And so, and she also put it in the chat box for you to join my community. So the high performance mastermind, so I offer individual one-on-one coaching programs, and I offer group coaching programs. And my group coaching is created in the concept of a mastermind. And a mastermind isn't so much just me working with individuals in the groups. It is the entire group coming together and supporting each other. And so it's a very powerful program. I've run several of these, and the impact and effectiveness is great. And so I'll be launching new masterminds. If there's enough interest in India, that possibly we could have a mastermind with with 100% Indian contingent. And so I would love that if we were able to develop that. And so if you're interested in it, first step is to join my community, and then reach out to me. I'm also offering, I also offer a free strategy session for a discovery session, and then possibly a strategy session if we want to take it to the next step. But that's all without charge. So it's essentially 1 hour of coaching that is incredibly valuable, and it will help to get you to take the next step in terms of your growth, in terms of high performance and personal growth. So that by joining my community, following that link, you can also sign up for those strategy sessions if you wish to do that.
Yes, I highly recommend for all of you who are here, and for the people from YouTube, I will be pasting this link there as well. Okay, so join this community, have a one-on-one discussion with James. It's really amazing. I personally had a session with him, and he gives very insightful things to you that will actually blow your mind away. So join this community, and as we discuss in the session, coaches really help you to get out of your own thinking and to develop a new thinking, right? So that was wonderful here, and so with this, I think we are at the end of the session. So just within few minutes, I will summarize the session, what all we discussed. So if in a short summary, I would like to tell the audience what it was related to. So we started with self-reflection, self-understanding, which brings into more clarity to our life. And this can be practiced with simple exercises like journaling, then gratitude, maintaining the gratitude journal, writing down what you're grateful for each day, each single day. Then we also saw why it is important to have the energy levels and how high performers get that. So it is through different techniques you can actually experiment as per your body type and your surrounding, what suits you more, so that you can generate greater levels of energies so that you can be more productive. Then we also saw that how high performers are different comparatively to when it comes to influence, when it comes to showing the courage. Okay, James also shared very good books. Deep Work he shared, then The Drive was another book. I will be sharing those details also. So please, together, I think there are this 6 habits which are also given in the book, which is behind me, High Performance Habits. But it's also very nice book to read. So these are mainly 6 habits which are demonstrated in that book. That is, first is seek clarity, then generate energy. Third one is raise necessity. Fourth one is increase productivity, then develop influence, and then sixth one is demonstrate courage. So all these habits, as Jane rightly mentioned, these are interlinked with each other, right? It's not just that with one habit you are able to achieve the high performance, but with all this habit together, when you develop your own self, then no one can stop you from becoming a high performer. So with this, I really thank you, James, for taking out your precious time and giving me the morning time on the weekend especially. I really am grateful to you for having here in my talk show, and I'm sure you have added lot of value to the audience. Thank you so much again, and thank you everyone who are here listening to us, and looking forward to communicate and interact with all of you. And yes, we have received very good responses from Nivedita. Yes, thanks James for answering and organizing for this session. Yes, I'm sure it's going to help all the listeners positively. Pallavi is saying thanks James and Megha for this insightful session. Amol is also saying thank you. This is really helpful and great session. Thank you so much for your amazing responses. And especially we should thank the James. Because of him only this session was successful.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Megha. It was a real pleasure, a lot of fun, a great way to start my Saturday here, Saturday morning here for me.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for the opportunity to talk with your audience. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you, James. So, good night, everyone who are in India, and James, have a nice day ahead. We will see you soon. Yes.
Great.
Maybe in the
Thank you, Megha.
mastermind we will meet. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.